We are in the chambers of Snowmass Village Town Council, and this evening will be our EOTC meeting. And with that said, I'm going to see if we have quorum. So,
County does.
Aspen?
With a small queue, because it's not a legal meeting, so Ward and I are the only people here from the city of Aspen. And so we had a prep meeting Tuesday from John, and I've written authority to cram through everything that Ann sent me an email to support. So, but we'll continue on and give discussion about how Aspen's going to, what we're thinking about now, and remain open-minded as we have a further discussion. But it is only Ward and I, and we apologize.
Thank you very much. And Adam, I think this may be your last meeting.
Yes, we can.
We're going to miss you.
Well,
I want to thank you personally for all your contributions. You've done an incredible job.
I appreciate that, so we can talk about a couple
Always
things.
prepared.
Yeah, we'll be ready
Okay.
to go. Thanks.
Picken County. Right here? We are all here.
We are here, sorry.
Oh,
Kelly, I want to welcome you. This is your first meeting of EOTC.
glad you're here. Snowmass Village, we're waiting for Alyssa, who went to Aspen. So she'll be back. And Bill Mattson should be here. I'm sure he'll show up. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start with public comment. Anyone want to make a public comment? Yep. Is this the spot here, or? You can go right there. It's here? Okay.
Minutes, Tony.
I want to be out of here by 6 o'clock.
Well, we have Squirm Night in Aspen, so we've got to be out of here by like 5:15 if we're going to get stuck in that traffic going to entrance to Aspen and be there by 6. So, but very, very quickly, I'd like to reserve most of my comments. I only want to comment on one thing on the agenda, and that has to do with your strategic planning during your retreat session. But very quickly, I wanted to personally thank Adam Frisk very much for his years of dedication for the EOTC, and he's done a lot of really good things for our city, especially when it comes to transportation. And one of the biggest things is that they said the Lift 1A could not be brought further down the mountain, and with Adam's guidance and his understanding of the issue, while it's not taken, like not a part of the main part of the transportation, it's still transportation up and down the mountain. But that's just one of the little things. But Adam, thank you again.
You're welcome. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Dave. Dave Pesachek.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight, or this afternoon. Before I get started, I just want to remind everyone here about the mission statement for the EOTC, and that is to work collectively to reduce and or manage the volume of vehicles on the road and continue to develop and support a comprehensive multimodal long-range strategy that will ensure a convenient and efficient transportation system for the Roaring Fork Valley. So just to remind everybody that we do have a mission statement. That is it currently. And then because of it, we do have some quorum issues here tonight. I want to remind everybody that this is a recommending body only, and that we do not necessarily need a quorum to proceed from each jurisdiction. Each jurisdiction does, the recommendation moves on by 51+% based on the number of people that are in representation here tonight. However, all budget items do need to go back to each jurisdiction, be approved by resolution in accordance with the quorum rules for each jurisdiction. So just to put that out there, looking at the population we've got here tonight. Do you have any questions on that?
Is that clear to everybody?
Okie dokie. Go ahead.
All right. Tonight, looking to go through several action items. The first one is the EOTC budget impacts from the passage of 7A. The second one is going over the dynamic message sign, or DMS, as well as a decision on the Park and Ride name. The third one is Brush Creek Park and Ride flap grant improvements. And the fourth is to set a date for the EOTC retreat. We do have one update that will be provided later by David Peckler regarding the Town of Snowmass Transit Center. Not going to be going through the other updates today, but if you do have any other questions at the end, we can go through those. Looking at the EOTC budget impacts from RAF to 7A, if you'll recall, from the prep meetings that we had, this is
a reallocation of approximately $419,000 that was allocated for 2019 in order to connect Town of Snowmass Village with Brush Creek Park and Ride. This $419,000 came 50% above the line, so out of the annual appropriations for the EOTC and 50% from the Snowmass savings account. As a result of the passage of 7A, RAFTA will be covering this expense through the funds that they're collecting from that ballot measure. This reallocation does bring the Snowmass savings account to its cap of approximately $5.8 million, and that's after the 2019 anticipated distribution of $350,000 for the transit center planning. If you recall, with the savings accounts, they do accumulate funds. Snowmass accumulates at 25% of leftovers from above the line. Aspen accumulates at 75%. Once Snowmass hits the cap, it no longer accumulates those funds. And that cap on Snowmass decreases as funds are withdrawn for the transit center. So funds can be withdrawn for other reasons, and that fund can replenish. If the funds are withdrawn for the transit center, then that reduces the cap, and it can no longer appreciate past that point. So that's why the current cap is $5.8 million. Last year would have been $350,000 higher because of the $350,000 withdrawal for the transit center in 2019. So we've got the staff recommended action is to unallocate the Snowmass BRT connecting service funds. So that's simply taking the 419 from the allocation, 50% above, 50% from the Snowmass savings account, and moving it back into unallocated funds across the board. Again, that does move the Snowmass savings account to its cap. I do understand that there's some interest in possibly recapturing that capacity from the savings account for Snowmass. There is a goal, a budgetary goal, to hit cap by 2020 for the Snowmass Transit Center. So that would be a complete withdrawal of the $5.8 million in 2020 for that transit center if all goes as budgeted currently. So there is some extra capacity there, and just want to put that out there. I understand that there may be a request tonight to do that. If there is, staff recommends the alternative of continuing it to a future meeting. I think about it a little bit further, would recommend postponing it to the October meeting when we'd be discussing budget issues anyway. We'd be going through the budget items.
Is
And that's
Dave,
what I got
is
with that.
Dave Johnson here?
He
Thought I
is.
saw him. Dave, I was talking with Dan Blankenship. The good news is he's on vacation. He's heading to Moab. We were talking about this $419,000 and the Snowmass, what he's seeing in Snowmass. One of the thoughts he has, and I don't know, Dave, I'm sure you were part of that, you may have been part of that conversation, was the fact that we have standing room only on our buses coming up from the intercept lot day after day after day. And one thought might be to increase
Shuttle frequency, and how we would do that, I don't know,
with some of those dollars.
to me, it almost looks unsafe with,
The good news is it's a great snow year. The bad news is we don't have any parking.
so, I don't know, Dave, did
You have that conversation with Dan at all?
I did not have that conversation with Dan, but we would be happy to come back the next DOTC meeting and
Yeah,
talk
they were
about where.
looking at some ideas because they heard that
this might
be an issue. But you want to postpone this till the October meeting?
If the EOTC is in agreement to postpone, then I would recommend the October meeting. That would give me time to work with RAFTA and come back to you all and look at what those options may be, what the feasibility is as well.
I don't have a problem with doing that, and give Snowmass some time to bring back some more information.
Adam or Ward?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, Aspen's fine with that. Or Mike, at least. We'll speak for everyone else because they're not here.
Yeah, Steve, go for it. Great.
Just a thought with Snowmass Village building the new transit station. Is there any way to
Front more money to that, and would that help
the whole budget thing, if more money could be allocated to that, change
Up their budget from the 350,000 this year.
So the way the budget is currently set up and the policies are set up, if the money goes to the transit center, then it reduces that cap, and then they would already be drawing on the 5.8 million that they're counting on for construction in 2020. At least I understand they're counting on. So that's kind of the landscape, is that the funds can be used for transit purposes, but we would need to alter policy in order to allow them to put those funds toward the transit center and not reduce that cap, if that makes sense.
Steve, that begs the whole question of these caps that we put.
I mean, these go back to when I first went on council. And to me, I'm not sure they make a lot of sense anymore. I don't know. I think that's an issue for the strategic planning retreat.
George is, so if we do this in October, by then we'll have a strategic planning retreat.
So everybody's shaking their head, so we'll move it until October.
Okay.
Are we shaking or nodding?
shaking. I think we're good.
Everybody's
Agreement?
Yeah, up and down, up and down,
up and down.
up and down, north and south, not
We'll
east and
vote
west.
for Aspen, too.
Okay, Dave.
So we just moved.
And thank you for all the work that you've been doing on this issue.
Of course.
Okay.
Moving on to the dynamic message sign. So a little bit of background. You all received the prep, so I won't go into too much of the background. But we are approaching 30% plans. We have done the outreach that we discussed, and we are looking to move on to the next step. So those include moving on to bid and moving on to CDOT permitting. Looking at the map here, this is intended to show the location, so this wasn't in the prep presentation. So it's approximately 1 mile down valley from Brush Creek Park and Ride, just on the down valley side of the Smithway intersection. There was a question earlier about how much view you have coming up to the sign. It's about, and Chris is here, he's the engineer from Pickens County that's been working on this, so he knows these kinds of details inside and out. I understand we would have about 30 seconds of view time leading up to the sign coming up valley.
Well, Chris, welcome.
Thank you.
I don't think I've ever met you before. So I want to welcome you to Snowmass and EOTC.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Apparently my calculation was wrong, so I apologize. It's a good thing he's here.
There'll be two times. There'll be the line of sight for legibility. That's the time that somebody will see the sign and say there's a message coming up. And then there'll be a visibility distance, which will be the 12 seconds that the user or the traveler will have to read the sign. So it's 12 seconds total time to read whatever message we want to display.
Does that 12 seconds change if it's either of the two types of signs that we're considering?
It'll be dependent on the speed, the travel speed on the highway. It's 55
More the
miles per
travel
hour.
speed.
So he'll have, user who sees the sign in 1,000 feet will have 12 seconds to read. I think our longest message will be in 2 panels, and there'll be 3 lines on each panel. So total of 6 lines and 2 seconds per line.
So that's if they're going speed limit.
That's assuming that they're going the speed limit.
So actually, the time is about 3 seconds. Make sure you're speaking to your mics, guys, as I'm watching in
She'll
here.
come out and move us around.
Okay. George?
So do we have the ability, as we're working with CDOT, to actually perhaps do a message that may correspond with the message that we're doing here at the basalt location? Because right now, the only message on that is Independence Pass is closed. In the summertime, the only thing we'll say is Independence Pass is open. And it seems like there's an opportunity to capture some of that visibility in basalt on Highway 82 as we're moving up valley.
So my conversations, actually both of our conversations with CDOT, we do have the ability to request displays on their signs, but we can't have control of them. So they're still controlled by CDOT. And it doesn't sound like it's too hard of a process. It's just a matter of getting those messages approved and getting it through the CDOT bureaucracy to get it.
Yeah, but
Get it out.
because what we're doing is we're trying to drive traffic to the CDOT owned lot.
I don't think that we would have this, we wouldn't be as nimble.
Yeah.
So I think that we can get some messages out there, but I think it would be more of a, maybe 6 to 9 a.m. we can have something displayed, but we're not going to be able to do
Right,
live displays.
right, yeah.
That kind of thing.
The hard part is when people are driving up here early Saturday mornings and
And the lots are filled in snowmass, or Aspen, a bridge goes out, or a pedestrian goes out. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. You talk how we manage it,
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah. I'll get to that point
Okay.
here in a second. The first item that we're looking to do, or looking for direction from you on, is the reallocation of funds. So we are moving through this faster than was budgeted. So we have $50,000 budgeted currently. That's for planning. Chris, as an employee of Pickens County, we haven't had to dip into this 50,000 yet, so it's still available for construction. And we have $400,000 currently budgeted in 2020. So the request now is to move the $400,000 construction money from 2020 to 2019, and that would give us the ability to go ahead and move forward with bidding. So the intent here is that we would go forward with bidding as soon as we have the appropriation, and bring those bids back to you if we're over the $450,000 in June, to get your thoughts or any, an idea as to where we would need to go from there. But initially, we're looking for the reallocation of the $400,000 from 2020 to 2019.
Comments?
I'm okay with that.
Greg Poshman?
I'm okay with the reallocation to move it forward. My concerns are, at this point regarding the sign, I think we'll get to the conversation of what it's going to look like and the aesthetic. This is the entrance to the valley, to Snowmass and Aspen, so I just want to make sure that people understand that I don't want a sign that looks like
I-70 entering Denver. It's got to look like something appropriate to our valley.
Gotcha.
And I don't know what our opportunities are, but maybe that'll come out in the design phase.
And that's my next slide here. So we don't have too many opportunities or too many options. We've got 2 standard signs to choose from since it's on a CDOT highway. So they've got the butterfly sign and the cantilever sign. So these are some visualizations that Chris put together. So the left picture, that's as it looks today. The right top picture is a butterfly sign, so that's the design that you see on Highway 82 currently. And then the one right at the bottom, that's the cantilever sign, so this is the type that you would see going into Carbondale. The sign sizes that we're looking at are 26 by 8 for the butterfly sign, and that's in order to fit the three lines of text and to get the width that we need to fit the messages that we're looking at. As well as the cantilever sign could be a little bit larger at 31 by 10. And there's some pros and cons to each of these. As you may have noticed, the staff recommendation is for a butterfly design with a 26-foot board. Some of the pros to the cantilever design is that it does have a stronger emphasis on messages. So you're conveying the message stronger to the driver. You're also able to display longer and larger messages. It's got good legibility during inclement weather, and it's generally easy to read from both lanes. Some of the cons, obviously, are the visual impacts, I think is the biggest one. But it is also more expensive. You might have seen the engineer's cost estimate. And it's also more difficult to maintain. And apparently, Chris went out there and verified that it would be more difficult to see during sunrise, because the sunrise is right behind that point. Whereas the butterfly sign would be down more off to the right, have the mountain backdrop instead of the sky. So you eliminate that, the sunrise issue. The butterfly does have some pros in terms of it is less visually impacting. It's less expensive, easier to maintain, easier to read during sunrise. Some of the cons, we can definitely fit all our messages on there that we're looking at. But you can't fit as long of a message. There'd need to be more abbreviations. So that leads into the shorter and smaller displays. It's also can be harder to see during inclement weather when you start to get snow being plowed over near the sign, and it can be more difficult to read in congestion. So if you think about the signs that are out there now. If there's traffic in the right lane and you're in the left lane, sometimes you can't see over those vehicles to see the sign. So you don't get some of that, that visual impact to drivers.
Hey, Dave, how high is that sign off the road? How high is it above the ground?
For the butterfly,
Yeah.
17 feet. We might go a little bit higher just to get a little bit more above the ground. It's going to be like 9-foot clearance from the edge of shoulder. The sign will be 8 feet high, so we're looking at about 17 to 18 feet max height above the roadway.
Bob has a question.
Chris, the letters on these two signs, are they the same size? Or is the cantilever, because it's a bigger sign, have bigger letters?
No, in our visualizations, we show the same message sign. They look different because of the way the camera takes a picture. That's in our visualization.
But in operation, they would have the letters would be the same size?
The same lettering, yes. 7 by 4 foot, 7 by 4 pixel dimensions. The recommended is a 7 by 5 pixel dimension, but we have been approved by CDOT to go ahead and use the type of messaging size that we would like to use to fit the messages that we want on these both boards, whether it's a cantilever or a butterfly.
Kelly?
Thank you. David, do we currently have any butterfly signs of this size and width in the valley?
Not that I'm aware of. The signs that are currently butterfly design and in the valley are 18-foot wide, is my understanding.
And where are
Be
those
larger than
located?
There's one near Public Works, and then there's another one, Snowmass Canyon, yeah.
There's actually two between our proposed location and Public Works. There's one between Brush Creek Road and Public Works, and there's one down from Brush Creek Lot. So as you're leaving Brush Creek Lot to go down Valley, there's another one there. And it's only about 3,000 feet from our proposed location.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Your word is one of assault, right?
Valley outside of Basalt, yeah.
If you're looking at the effectiveness of the sign for people to be able to read it, the cantilever, I think is obviously a better choice, but we have to make the decision between what Greg was saying about how appropriate it is for our valley and how that looks. So for functionality and getting the message across the cantilever, and probably for fit for the valley, the butterfly. So I think that is the balancing act that we have to work with. I guess on balance, the butterfly seems to be the choice of the people that were contacted for from neighborhoods. But as far as getting the message across, I think the cantilever is more effective. Interested in what the rest of the EOTC has to say about that.
I do think the complications with reading the cantilevered sign during sunrise, though, is meaningful through much of the year. So, that, in addition to a whole lot of other factors, makes me prefer the butterfly sign, because that is going to occur during a period of time where we're trying to actually encourage the most usage of the Brush Creek.
Yeah, that's probably the strongest argument against the cantilever, I think. Well, that and aesthetic.
When we had this discussion at Snowmass Town Council, I think it was Monday night.
Yeah.
Dave, refresh my memory. I'm getting old.
Yeah, it was Monday.
We were we were more focused on the butterfly, primarily for the aesthetic reasons. And so, Pitkin County, Aspen, your thoughts? Adam, you got any thoughts over there?
Yeah, when we, Ward, can you correct me if I'm wrong, when we talked about this, Aspen was unanimously supportive of the butterfly, really for aesthetic reasons.
Patty?
Yeah, and I agree with Ward's comments, though, that the ability to read it is better with the cantilever, but I think the butterfly is more appropriate, especially since it lines up with the other ones in the valley. And the first impression you get when you see it is by entering, some major freeway in Los Angeles.
I asked the question about the size of the letters because I felt that if the letters were bigger on the cantilever, that it would make a significant difference, if not just in the number of seconds you have to read, but the bigger the type is, the easier it is to read. But given the fact that the letters are the same in both cases, I guess I don't see as large an advantage in the cantilever as I might have previously.
Yeah, Greg?
I was just looking, it says up to 26 feet wide for the butterfly. My ambition would be to make the sign as small as we possibly could and still have an effective sign. You can make it, the other ones are 18 feet wide. I'd love to see a mock-up put on the side of the road out there so people can get an idea of what it looks like, because I think that if we erect one of these signs and it pops up overnight, we're going to have some feedback from the community about, why are we doing this and what are we doing and does it need to be so big? So my ambition would be to, let's see how small we can make this thing and how, is there anything else we can do? Can we put a frame around it? Can we put a mock-up up? Those are things that concern me. We spent, I don't know how many meetings trying to put the sign for our solid waste center, aka the dump, together, and honestly it took us many, many months to downsize it and reduce it. Now we've got a sign that works and people aren't too angry anymore, but we had letters to the paper about that sign, so I can expect the same here. So as much as we can do to make it look less like an I-70 Denver on-ramp sign and more like a sign appropriate to the valley, the better off we are.
I hate to say this, I've gone up and down 82. I saw a pretty stone wall, but I didn't know there was variable messaging.
It's not variable messaging. The landfill sign is just it doesn't need to be variable.
Oh, I was going to say.
Yeah. No, it was not variable.
But it's a pretty sign.
It's pretty. It looks like a real estate development.
Yes, it does.
Well, maybe too, it looks like a landfill sign to me, so.
Yeah, Steve, you had some comments.
I think making it smaller, I can understand Greg's concerns about the size, but the point is we want people to be able to see it. We already have concerns about the butterfly not being as visual in your face as the cantilever, so I think making it even smaller will reduce our ability to have the messages that we want out on there and the ability of people to see what we want them to see. So, and I also understand Greg's position about wanting to see some kind of mock-up, but I don't know what the expense of that and, so I think we need to take that into consideration.
Chris or Dave, have you looked at that issue on perhaps, and Steve, I'll come back to you, but have you looked at us?
In terms of modeling the messages, we modeled them with the 18-foot sign and the 26-foot sign.
And?
We can fit them on the 18-foot sign. There's a lot more abbreviations. So it becomes more cryptic, the message types, I guess.
We're pretty smart here.
I think that two smaller signs would be better than one bigger sign because first message says traffic's backed up 45 minutes from the airport into town. Second message says park and ride here, next bus in 5 minutes. You'll be in town in 10 minutes if you ride the bus. If you had two signs because if we try to put too much information on one sign, the people won't read the whole thing. Maybe they'll miss a critical part of the message. And I have no idea what two smaller signs would cost compared to one bigger one, but it might be something to consider.
So in terms of the issue of you see the sign and then leading into as you get closer, we have in there some static signs because right now there's no signage out there except for some little rafta park and ride signs that I didn't even realize were there until a couple months ago. So we're looking at some green or I think blue static signs that just say Brush Creek Park and Ride that way. So a couple of those. And when you say two signs, I imagine one would have a message that stays static, and then the next one stays static.
Sure.
So I'm wondering if we're not kind of hitting the same goal with the blue signs after the variable message sign without the expense and potential visual impact of having another potentially 18-foot
Like the
sign.
one in your drawings that you have on the PowerPoint,
it says Brush Creek Park and Ride, next left. Well, everybody should know that aside from a tourist, but a little fixed sign could say this, that message. And then, I mean, I would like to use the variable message for next bus to Snowmass is in X number of minutes, next bus going into Aspen is in X number of minutes, and what the travel times are. Really useful travel information.
And I'll get to that point here in a minute, too.
George
In
had a
terms of
comment.
that.
I mean, this could be a quick discussion. I'm not going to support more signage, more sign proliferation, pollution. I think, the old adage, form follows function. We want one sign to be functional to try to provide a simple message to alert that there is parking and to utilize it.
Mm-hmm.
You've got pretty much the same traffic going up the valley in the morning. And I think people get used to knowing where the signages are. I looked at a sign in Basalt every day. It's just there, and people just get used to it. So I would be concerned about trying to squeeze the message we want in to save a few feet, because once it's up, it's just part of the landscape. But two signs, it's just more pollution. So.
U26, are you for the larger sign?
Well, it depends on the message that we want to provide and ensure that it's clear for people who are not texting or talking on their phones, right?
I'm always worried about abbreviations, given the Latino community and other nationalities that are here. You had a comment, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about this as we sort of got into multiple signs with different things, but these days, so many people use their phone to get them from point A to point B, even if they know how to get there, because the phone can tell them what the traffic situation is like. So our problems tend to be twofold. The parking lots are full, and the second is that there's a line of traffic and the traffic is backed up. So as an alternative, or maybe in addition to this sign, can we find out how to get our parking lot situation to come up on these apps like Waze, which is a very popular one that people use, to get them, places, even when they know how to get there, because they're doing it to find out what the traffic is. It might replace this whole idea of a sign.
I can't support asking people to be more distracted driving that highway. I got beaten up by a member of the public about asking parents to just talk to their kids in the back seat during traffic jam, encouraging drivers to drive distracted. So I would be very careful in referring people to their phones driving on Highway 82. Safety is kind of a big issue for me. So
I don't think there's one solution, Bob. I think it's a series. As we learned from the upper mobility study, there's not one answer, but there's a series of opportunities, and so that's one idea.
That's another opportunity. I agree that it might not be the answer, but when we're trying to figure out a difference between an 18 and a 26-foot sign, and if that 8 feet is that important to some people, then here's an opportunity where maybe the sign isn't necessary. That's why I really brought it up to start with. But you're right, it is just another option, another opportunity to get the information out.
And I don't think it's necessarily a distraction thing, Patty. I think that for some people, like, for instance, when you go to the Denver airport and before you're going, you want to know what are the wait times to get through security and all that stuff. You go on, you say, oh, God, it's in an hour. I better leave now. I mean, it's more of like a heads up. I mean, Pitkin County Alert does heads up. It's kind of, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I don't envision people sitting there on their phone, trying to figure it out. It's more of like what's happening up in Aspen, how much time do I need to leave? I mean, for those of you that live in Aspen, you don't deal with the snowmass to Aspen, but I mean, there's some mornings where it takes me 15 minutes and some mornings where it takes me an hour.
I agree.
And there's no way to know.
I'm concerned about, referring, it's hard enough for people to have to read signage along the way. We have serious issues with distracted drivers,
Yeah.
and I just think we need to be very careful.
I would add too, with the technology piece in terms of using your phone, we have very little control over how Waze acts or how Google acts. And even just looking at which we'll talk about here in a minute, the name, and I'm not aware of a way to really get Google to change the name of the park and ride. So even to get them to change, if you're going to Aspen, telling them to pull off and park, I can look into it, but I would suspect that our level of control there is very limited.
I'm going to bring this conversation or discussion, trying to wrap it up here.
Yeah,
Because we've got a lot more yet to cover.
we do.
Yeah, Kelly?
May I ask one more question?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you envision that the message on the sign would switch frequently? Like, would it flash between two signs of text within that 12-second period?
Yes. In order to get the level of message across that we're looking at, most of them would need to switch in order to do that.
So one driver would read two screens of text in the course of time passing that sign.
Yeah, if I understand
That
correctly.
might help suggest looking at a smaller sign and alleviating the need for two.
But the concern is abbreviations, and how is that going to get the message across? Because with the smaller sign, we might not be able to fit the 3 lines in legible font to get through. So, I mean, that's what I've heard as part of the discussion.
Yeah, that's it.
What I
something else?
do here is saying butterfly sign. Correct me as I go through this.
Before we get down to
Okay.
figuring out where everybody sits, I've got a few more things to go over.
Okay, then we'll come back and summarize.
You can discuss it all at once.
Because we want to give our staff direction tonight.
Yeah, it would be
Okay.
helpful. The standardizing the name of the lot. So Brush Creek, it's, as you know, is currently known as Brush Creek or Intercept Lot. It's kind of interchangeable. Staff is recommending that it be just standardized to Brush Creek Park and Ride. That is the legal name of the lot. A suggestion has come up to change it to Aspen Snowmass Park and Ride. This is what I was alluding to. If we did decide to change the name, one of the issues that staff sees is I don't know at what point it would actually change on people's phones, on Google, Apple Maps, ways to where if they are looking for Brush Creek, that it would actually come up. There are some other reasons why we're suggesting that, sticking with Brush Creek Park and Ride. It is easier to abbreviate, so as the sign gets smaller, with the 18-foot and the 26-foot, we can stick with Brush Creek PNR. The Aspen Snowmass would need to be abbreviated Aspen/Snow PNR, which could create some confusion, and particularly with, as we heard before, with Snowmass, Town of Snowmass Village versus Snowmass, and confusion there in terms of which direction we're referring to. Let's see, what am I missing? It's currently utilized by CDOT and RAFTA. So if you go onto their websites, it's currently referred to as Brush Creek Park and Ride. And again, I would imagine over time we can get that to change, but it takes time, and there would be a period of confusion in terms of what we're actually referring to.
And it would require RAFTA to change all their signage.
It would, yeah.
That's, I mean, it's a little money.
The name of the sign, so calling it Brush Creek Park and Ride is also consistent with the rest of the naming for park and rides up and down the valley. So, Carbondale obviously is in Carbondale Park, Carbondale, so that's why it's called that. But this is on Brush Creek Road, so it identifies the location, then its use. So we've got 27th Street Station Park and Ride, again at 27th Street, West Glenwood. So that's consistent with the naming typology that's out there currently.
So, David, the naming of all these things appears to me to have been done for people who are commuting by bus and know where they're going and know what the route is. But this is for people, as much as people who know where they're going, people who don't know where they're going, people who don't know what Brush Creek Park and Ride is, how far or how close it is to Aspen and/or Snowmass. And frankly, if we're trying to get, if we're trying to get guests to, you know, use the park and ride, and let's say everybody, when the lots get full, to use the park and ride without having to go up to either Aspen or Snowmass and then turn around, I think using Brush Creek Park and Ride is not very clear.
I think what you just hit on is the primary benefit to changing to Aspen Snowmass Park and Ride. So that's, I think, the primary argument for me in favor of that. I think that looking at the dynamic message sign, that's some of the reasons why on the staff side we believe that we need some static signs that say, hey, Brush Creek Park and Ride or Snowmass Park and Ride is this way. Because either way, if it just displays Snowmass or Aspen Snowmass Park and Ride, we still need those static signs to say, this is where you want to turn. So I think that they all need to work in conjunction, but you're right, that is the primary benefit there.
Yeah, Greg?
If I'm just trying to imagine if we had a static sign that said resort parking, park here at Brush Creek, Park and Ride, in whatever form or whatever we want to call it. I can't imagine that sign never changing. A static sign could solve the problem of saying park here for resort parking, pull in, or, you know, and that sign you probably never want it to change, right? Because we want every visitor to pull in there, and hopefully some of the commuters as well. So I'm just wondering if that could be handled with a static sign, that part of it. I like the idea of it being Aspen and Snowmass, but it's pretty compelling that everything else is called Brush Creek and it's a geographical location. But I'm just wondering, what do we need to be dynamic and what needs to be static? It seems to me anybody coming up the highway, we want them to park there. Doesn't matter when or who they are.
Right. So we are looking at a combination of the dynamic and static. So static just meaning a standard metal sign that just says
park here.
Yep. This park and ride is that way. So that's all we mean by static sign.
Yes, Steve.
I and can see this whole place becoming like Town Park Station for Snowmass Village, where we're contemplating putting the restrooms, if we have enough room, like in that mid area. Build a nice visitor center with a person in there who can answer questions. If we could get every tourist turning in that way to go get information, find out that they can park here for free and ride the bus into town, or, you know, whatever kind of information they need. And it's kind of a bigger picture concept that I think we should contemplate where we want it to go, and maybe that's partly something we want to talk about at our retreat.
I think that with the flap grant developments and the DMS, that is more or less the direction that it's moving in the greater scheme.
And the flap grant covers what, all the restrooms?
We'll get into that here
Okay,
in a bit, but yeah, primarily the restrooms.
Any other comments?
Anything else on the name?
Yeah, Ward.
Well, I can certainly see moving the budget from 2020 to 2019. I agree with Bob that as we have people coming up the valley, that Aspen/SMV PNR would, I think people understand SMV is Snowmass Village, but at least for tonight we can move the budget to 2019 and perhaps have these and go with Butterfly as a direction we're going. And if we need to have a further discussion on the naming, maybe do that at a retreat as we get closer towards construction.
Can you work with that?
Yeah, we do need to get our lists into CDOT for approval. I understand that it shouldn't take too long to get those approved. Right now, we've got 2 lists created, one that says Brush Creek Park and Ride, and one that says Aspen Snowmass Park and Ride. We can get them both approved. And we can, once they're approved, we can switch the messages easy. The big question for us is the static signs. So if we are ordering some static signs after the dynamic, we need to know what those would say.
We anticipate construction, if we did go construction this year, completion end of December for most of the project. I think any time we could order those signs, whatever we want to say between now and then. But the static signs, but the dynamic sign, we would want a decision on the sizing as soon as possible.
What do the people from Snowmass Village think about an abbreviation of SMV?
Tourists are not going to know SMV. If a tourist has not come up here before, they're going to use Google Maps and they're looking for parking options or ways. So it's already in there as Brush Creek Park and Ride, and that's what they could see. An SMV, nobody knows what that is. We do.
Well, we're somebody.
Yeah, but I mean, the tourist.
And Aspen, and probably less people know what Aspen/snow would mean. That means there's snow in Aspen.
Yeah.
Go to Aspen, right? That
Don't go
that works
snowmass.
against your marketing campaign.
Yeah, Aspen has snow. Yeah, Bill, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm in favor of Brush Creek Park and Ride. I think it's more consistent with the naming up and down the valley, and I think that when people are looking for it, if the naming is part of the destination, I think it's very helpful.
Any other comments? And we're going to give direction to Dave.
Marky, I want to mention something about what Alyssa said, which is important. If she's coming from Snowmass, she, of course, will never see this sign. For a future discussion, I'd like to talk about any way we can get intelligence on how long the traffic jam into Aspen is. So Alyssa could check before she leaves the house and know the line's backed up to the airport, the line's backed up to Buttermilk. Where is it? That shouldn't be too hard to figure out, and I'm just wondering if we can work on that, because that would be very useful to any commuter coming in.
Right. So
it's a future discussion.
We actually are currently working on that as a part of the dynamic message sign to be able to display real-time. It's so long from this sign into Aspen by bus or Snowmass by bus versus by car.
It won't help her, though, if she's coming from Snowmass, right?
It won't, but I don't know that we may be able to make it live and put it on a website or something like that.
You could do it, look at it before you leave your house.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Not while I'm driving.
Not while you're driving.
Still on ways before I leave the
Sorry,
house.
Greg brings up an interesting problem, because this sign isn't going to help people leaving from Aspen driving to go ski in Snowmass. And people do that to find out that the parking lots are full. So the reality is they're not going to drive all the way to Brush Creek to go, and then go up to Snowmass. They're going to come up Owl Creek. That's the road that we all use from Aspen to and from Aspen. And there's nothing that's going to help those people to know if those parking lots are full.
I mean, that's the problem we've had this winter. I mean, the parking lots are a major problem, especially on Saturdays with AVSE. I mean, if you've ever been over to Two Creeks, it's like a car zoo. And I think the most frustrating thing for people that I've talked to this winter is getting all the way into Snowmass and finding there's nowhere to park. And they have to go all the way back to Intercept, get on the bus, and come back up. And for a guest, that is not a very positive experience.
Right. And we can only catch so many people with the sign, unless we put one on Owl Creek and down valley on Highway 82 and up valley on Highway 82. I think that we can look into trying to make the messages that are being displayed on here live to someone, on their phone. But one of the issues that we're actually having is the technology piece, telling the difference between a car and a bus when they're in mixed traffic. So Chris has spoken to a lot of vendors out there. We had a call with one vendor that thought that they could do it by using algorithms to break it out. But I think a lot of this will come down to what we see in the bids. And we'll need to come back to you in June with what that looks like. There's a lot of companies out there that can do general traffic and how long that takes, but the differentiation between the bus and vehicle is proving to be less plowed territory.
So let's try to summarize here. Ward suggestion was, is there support for moving this into 2019 with 400,000 reallocation? Adam?
Yes.
Okay, so let's move that. And right now, I see more of a consensus of Brush Creek Park and Ride.
So in terms of the items that we're looking for direction on, we have the slide up now that has
go
been
ahead.
listed.
It's right there, okay. Butterfly, you've heard that one. Staff is recommending a 26-foot. I think there's, Adam on that?
I'm with Greg as small as possible, and only put it in when truly needed, and as late as possible.
Thank you.
But realizing that at some point it's coming.
You mean delaying putting the sign in at all for as long as possible? I think we need to get it in now so people can be utilizing it rather than say, well, wait another 5 years to do it. Yeah, I mean, I know that, I just want to make sure if we're going as small as possible, people are still going to understand the message and be able to read it. I'm concerned about. And it was Marky's point about abbreviations and you know, we just need to be sure that people can read it and understand it. So don't bother.
We have an 18-foot sign. Sorry, Marky. We have an 18-foot sign on the highway already that we can all use as a reference.
If we're going to use abbreviations, I would encourage us to have some of our English as your second language people read the abbreviations to see if they can figure out what do those really say.
Yeah.
A lot of those people are our construction workers that go up and down the valley.
So I'm not putting a number on the maximum dimensions. Sorry, I'm not putting a number on the maximum dimensions, but we are taking a sign that is used on I-70 all day long, dropping it on or State Highway. So I just think we should all just think about that as we try to figure out what as small as possible means. And if small as possible means we need to do a 26-foot butterfly sign, then that's where we should end up. There's no support for the cantilever, that's for sure.
Okay. You feel you have direction?
So we've got direction on the, we did decide on the reallocation of funds, 400,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
And then the butterfly, we have not decided on the size.
Well, I hear as small as possible to
Small
get
as
the
possible.
message across.
Our feeling is,
I'm more interested, if we are going to use abbreviations, I'm very sensitive to people that speak different languages and don't understand all this. I get texts, I don't even know what they mean with all these abbreviations.
and I can say that putting the list together, it's very difficult when you've only got 12 characters to deal with, trying to get these across and trying to appropriately abbreviate the words to make them legible. That's part of the reason why we recommend the 26-foot, is to try to get that point across as clearly as possible.
Yeah, I would have staff, and they've probably already have discussed with CDOT. I mean, CDOT, this is their business, knowing what we want to say, what CDOT would recommend. And are they recommending anything?
They do have people that can recommend. We're actually finding that some of the vendors are pretty helpful in abbreviating and using.
No, I meant in terms of the size of the sign. I mean, CDOT has signs throughout the state, so it seems like they would be a good resource to determine, based on our needs and our use, what would they recommend?
Yeah, they have standards that we're following clearly. Limit the size of the sign on a butterfly structure. We just have the option of providing the messaging that we want to display. We have the manufacturer emulate those messages and determines how much lettering we can put on each line of that message board. And we're finding out that to get the messages on the board that we want to display, we'll need a 26.
Our conversations with CDOT have been more of you can do up to this size and it's your sign and you get to display what you want on it, as long as those messages are approved.
And
inappropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of the size, what we did for the landfill was we put up a mock-up. We put up the bigger one, and then we thought that's too big. We put up a smaller one. We should do that same process here, so we can all drive by it and see what it looks like. Or maybe we could have a, you know, the 18-foot one and the 21-foot one 20 yards apart, so you could kind of compare them at the same time.
Well, the 18-foot is already in existence. You just have to look across the street. That one's 18 feet, correct? So that's already there. We can get a guideline on that. I don't necessarily having a problem putting a mock-up up if that's where this group wants to go. But again, we just need to make sure people can read it and understand it. And small would be great, but not if they can't read it and understand it.
Well, my goal would be if you have some mock-up of messages and you're working with vendors, in order to accommodate this message, whatever that message might be, do I need an 18-foot or do I need a 27-foot to accomplish the purpose? So
Like I
I
said-
can't judge on size,
Like
but
I
what
said,
I'm
we
hearing
can.
is staff saying.
Yeah, we can
larger
fit them
is
on
better.
18 feet. It's just the abbreviations.
One other thing is, can we do like two different, we show one message that flashes off, then another message comes up so we can get twice as much information?
That's the plan.
That's a possibility, and I think writing the messages is critical to the success of this whole thing. We want to make it so people can read it easily and understand it. We don't have abbreviations that nobody knows what they mean, and if it takes two flashing signs that alternate, I think we could probably get all the information we need on that.
And that's what when I say two panels, that'll be flashing in the 12 seconds. Each panel will be flashing for 6 seconds apiece. And that'll be the two messages that will be displayed for that 12 seconds that displays the overall message that we want to convey at the sign. So we will be displaying, flashing two messages for 6 seconds apiece.
Okay. Just like CDOT sign do now
Yes, correct.
on an
So
18-foot
somebody has
sign.
to read the second message first. And
Yeah.
Then you're
interpolate.
confused.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of messages are you putting on this board? That's what I want
So-
to know. I mean, like, how varied are we really talking about? Is it really that the parking lots are full? Or is there, I mean, I just want an idea of what kind of messages are going on this board.
Primarily, so from this group, parking lots are full, and travel times are the two, I think, specialized type signs that we're looking at, or messages that we're
That
looking
doesn't
at.
seem like a lot of wording.
Go back to the visualization
So-
of the maximum message. So that message
This
is
is one of
actually
them.
one of the messages we'll be displaying there. And that's
What
the
does it
biggest
say? Use Brush Creek.
PNR. Free.
Yeah, free bus. This says 99 minutes. Hopefully, they're more frequent than that.
How about saying Aspen full, use park and ride? And no parking in Aspen.
weeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're,
Well, I guess my point is that if there's really only maybe 2 or 3 messages that we're ever going to be putting on there based on parking and other things, like how, like that just gets to the point of how big it has to be. Because we kind of know what the messages are going to be. And, you know, what does that look like on a smaller sign?
It's a lot of words, actually.
So
It is.
I'm just curious, like, I mean, that was the main.
Let's have staff to work on this.
So what would you like to see? Would you like to see a list of messages, or
I'd like to see how they would look on a smaller thing versus a bigger thing, and like what you're really looking at for the abbreviations.
Like this right here, but on an 18-footer.
Right. Like what that really looks like, and how many words you have to really abbreviate, or can you just simplify the language that you're using?
I think the language is to convey the message. We want people to use the park and ride.
Right.
So whatever the messaging is for that, and if CDOT says that we need 26 feet to have 6-second messages go up, I'm not a traffic engineer, and if CDOT says that's what we need, and that's the smallest size that we need on a butterfly sign to get the message across, to get people to get out of their cars at the Brush Creek intercept lot.
I don't think
I would
CDOT's gonna,
go with that.
I think CDOT's leaving that to us.
they are?
They
yeah.
are, but their recommendation was 26 feet.
I think we need to listen to the recommendations of those who do the work. Okay, we're going to kill,
One more thought. The two signs have the same message. It's a lot easier to read the cantilever one because the words there's bigger space in between the words. If we could make the letters smaller on the butterfly one and have more space between the words, I think it would actually be easier to read than that is there. I don't know if we can get a little bit smaller letters to maintain good readable words.
The font that we're showing there is a minimum that we can use with that spacing. So that's the smallest that we can show on a message on a board. That's what you're seeing right there. And that'll be a 26-foot wide board.
okay. Any other discussion? Leave it to staff.
I'm done.
You're done? Okay. Dave?
So just to clarify on that, where are we on this?
On the size of the sign.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing, people would like to see it smaller,
Right.
but if staff are recommending 26 feet and CDOT, your potential contractors are suggesting 26 feet to accomplish this objective and this message, then that's what I'm going to listen to. And I hear, so if you can get it smaller, that'd be great, but what I'm hearing, it's not possible.
It's not practical.
It's not practical.
And I think staff could send us something, we can disperse it out, that what Sue wants with this, same thing with the smaller sign and the, so we could see what that looks like.
Okay.
That's not hard to do, you did it here, you can do it one more time.
Okay, we're going to move on. Dave, you feel like you got it? No.
Did we
Creek
land
Park
on Brush Creek Park and Ride then?
Yes.
Okay. And so in terms of next steps, I'll work with Chris to get those visualizations put together. It would mean, though, that we're not able to put it out to bid in April, so we would bump it out a little bit until October to get those back to you, which means it would be looking.
Is there any way, I'm just going to throw this out there, team. Is there any way that you could go to each one of the jurisdictions and have this conversation 26 or 18 when you do a little bit more homework? I hate to push this to October.
Yeah, I can do that.
Was that
If there's
comfortable for
agreement
everybody?
between the three jurisdictions, then we can move it forward.
I agree, I think we need to get it done sooner than later, and we could be putting it off a couple of years now if we, nope.
You'll talk to us in between.
Individually. Yeah.
Great.
I'm assuming that the structure that you hang the sign on is going to be the same whether it is a 26 or 18 foot.
Yeah, well, the smaller 18-foot wide sign will only require an 18-inch structure diameter. The 26 would be a 24-inch wide structure in the deeper case on.
Dave, do you and Chris, you feel like you get direction here on
think
going
so.
back to each
Yes. Yep.
jurisdiction? Okay, we look forward to that discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on
Very
to,
much, Chris.
what's that?
Thanks, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
Now to the easy one.
Yeah. Now onto the FLAP grant, the Federal Lands Access Program grant out at Brush Creek. So as we discussed in the prep meetings, we do have initial concepts back from the consultants. Just a reminder again about the open house on April 10th at CMC Aspen from 5 to 7:30. We are looking at getting to 30% plans for the EOTC review here in June, if we can get consensus on the restroom location here tonight. We're looking at final plans as well as Pickens County well septic permitting completed in 2020 with future EOTC review as appropriate. So 30% review anticipated in June, and then coming back to you as appropriate as those plans develop through the year. We're currently looking at construction in 2021. And currently, the action we're looking for here tonight is the restroom location. So these are just showing the overview of where the restrooms are located within the three concepts, and these are the same things that are in your packet. So we've got the mid station, which is just across the bus lane from the current bus station. The north of station, which is off into the corner, and the on platform,
And each of these have pros and cons associated with them. The north of station has the most expandability. It has the option to do an information booth, and carpoolers do not need to cross the bus lane in order to access it. It is the least convenient option, staff feels overall, so cumulative between transit riders and the carpoolers because it is kind of tucked into a corner. There are possibly security issues just because its location, it wouldn't have people traveling through it. It wouldn't have as many eyes on it. And it also utilizes parking spaces, and the transit users would have to cross the bus lane to access the restrooms. The mid-station, which is the staff recommendation, we feel is the most balanced in terms of convenience for both transit riders and carpoolers. It also has the best possible security in terms of people moving through the facility. So people who park and going to transit and transit back to park would all have to go through it. It does have the possibility for expansion, although not to the same extent as the north of station, and it also has the option for an information booth. Carpoolers would have to cross the bus lane, and it does utilize some parking spaces, which is the big negative for this one. The on-platform obviously is convenient to transit users, but not so convenient to carpoolers. It does not utilize any parking spaces, so that's the on-platform's big advantage. It is inconvenient to carpoolers, as they would also need to cross the bus lane. It's also not expandable, and there's no option there for an information booth. So it would more or less be a replacement of the porta potties that are there today. So that's the feedback that we're looking for here tonight. In terms of the circulation, you might have seen in the background around each of them, we have been discussing circulation among staff and RAFTA. Each of them we feel can accommodate the various aspects of circulation and other uses. So 15-minute parking, EV parking, bus turnarounds, kiss and rides, temporary bus stops, potentially or after during events. So right now we really just need to know where you feel is the best location for the restroom so that we can dive into getting the circulation plan up to 30%, as well as identifying the appropriate locations for the well and septic.
I'm supporting mid-station.
Patty's a mid-station.
How many parking spaces are lost in the mid-station?
So, I have that right here. So on platform, you would have a total of 496 paved spaces. With north of station, you would have 425, and with mid-station, you would have 430. So 96 minus 30 is
66.
66.
So I'm sorry. Does that include the opportunity for the further expansion that's beyond the FLAP grant? So there's no for the parking spots.
It would not preclude any future expansion.
Right.
So these would just be paved spots as a result of the.
Right. That's what I'm saying, because we have future opportunities to the east and probably to the west as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Dave, one thing I notice in the traffic flow pattern of the mid-station concept is that all vehicles end up going towards that, towards the circle at the end, and then turn left to come into the parking area. And unless there's some way to know that there are empty spaces
Closer to, in the current section that's, closer to the bus stop, people will have to drive all the way down and turn around and go all the way back in order to get to the opposite side. If you, do you follow what I'm saying?
Do you see this entrance here?
No, I didn't see that entrance.
So there's an entrance at this location as well as up here. So we anticipate on a normal day, people would be able to drive in and kind of get a feel for what the congestion level is.
And it actually, to me, it looked like greenery there.
Yeah, that's what it is currently.
Oh,
So
but
just
that's
the
going to be
underlying.
an entrance?
Under this concept, like I said, this is very preliminary.
Yeah.
At 30% plans,
Okay.
we'd have it more
That
nailed
helps.
down.
I have a quick question for you, Dave. One of the biggest challenges I personally have in parking in this lot and getting over to the bus platform is wintertime with tons of ice and snow. So to me, we need to look at an option that would provide the shortest distance on snow and ice, unless you plan on snow melting some of this. That's just me.
Yeah.
More than once slipped down that parking ride.
Gotcha.
And I would think you should be able to keep snow pretty well and ice away from whatever restrooms, particularly if it's mid-station. If on that north end, I don't find it convenient.
I don't know that we had the discussion about the location of the bathroom in our city council meeting, but I would favor the mid-station. It's regrettable that we lose parking spots, but they can be reclaimed in the future. So for the functioning, I think the mid-station, the staff recommendation. Don't know how Adam feels about that.
Let's just take a quick scan. Mid-station. Mid-station. Okay, mid-station.
And
Okay.
also comment, I do favor the mid-station. One of the uses this is going to get is people are going to see it's a 45-minute drive into Aspen. They have to use a restroom. They're going to know there's a nice restroom here with short-term parking. We're going to have people pulling off the highway, go in and use the restroom, and then go back and get in the line at the airport to get into town. That will be one of the uses of this park and ride. It's just to come in and use the restroom.
Yes.
And the mid-station is the best location for that use.
Just one clarification on the parking. When I say it's taking up parking, we're still adding a significant number of spaces. So we're still going from about 200 to 430. We're just not getting the full extent if we didn't put the restrooms up there.
I always hate to lose any parking space.
Yeah, I hear you.
But when you gotta pee, you gotta pee.
Marky?
I'd rather have nice usable amenities that fill
Yeah,
all
great.
the
Yes,
parking spaces than an amenity that gets ignored and leaves spaces empty.
I had a comment from a constituent who said they were concerned about the leach field. Can we put in a large enough leach field that we don't have to have pumper trucks coming in cleaning this septic system out? Is this going to be self-contained, and is it expandable? Do we know we have room to even put in enough of a restroom?
It's my understanding from the engineers that we do. They're still looking into that, so they've got two options that they're looking at right now. One up here and one down closer to Highway 82. I think right now, looking at the option closer to Highway 82, I think it provides more expandability. But that has not yet been determined. So that would, I'd have more solid recommendations for you in June.
Right. Just thinking if we're thinking about expanding in the future and we realize we can't, it'd be good to know that going into it.
Okay, I think you've got consensus.
All right, so mid-station?
Okay, next item is the date for the EOTC retreat.
Yeah, so just an overview on that. We are looking at setting up the retreat to be vision, values, and mission-based. So we would like it to be kind of a first step in a strategic plan, and hopefully getting to the point where we can prioritize or have standards for projects coming in, so that it's kind of selfish, so that my time can be well utilized, and geared towards something that you all want to see happen, but also so that the money can be spent efficiently, and your all time is used efficiently. So that's kind of we're trying to dig down deep at the retreat to get that basis set, and then moving it up from there. We are looking at the end of July or early August in order to do an environmental scan ahead of time. So I'd like to get you a list of everything that I'm seeing out there in terms of projects, EOTC operations, issues that need to be addressed, anything that takes your time, staff time, or money, so that you have that in front of you. And then looking at the retreat itself, very preliminary, obviously, but we're looking at hitting on history, the charge of the EOTC and current issues, as well as the Highway 82 EISs and RODs, so getting a basis, not necessarily coming to any sort of consensus around it, but trying to build an understanding of what they are and what they mean legally to you. As well as revisiting, obviously, the mission, identifying visions and values, and coming up with next steps from there. So we're looking at late July, early August. I have some feedback, like I mentioned to all of you, that August 9th is right now appears to be the best date, but there's a good number of you that I haven't heard from, so I'd like to see what dates would work best for you.
I'm already, no, I'm out of town on August 9th.
Okay.
This is me in St. Lucia.
Anytime after June 10th is fine by me.
We're moving it out.
And then I will veto.
That's the only date that I know.
I'm out of town briefly, like the 15th of August for like a long weekend, so that's the next Thursday. That would be the next Thursday, Friday, just so you know. But I'm in town on the 9th.
Late July is better, but I can work with either one.
Gotcha. If I sent out a doodle poll,
Yes.
Again? Be able to fill that out.
The doodle poll is coming your way, right?
We're going to have it on a flashing sign.
Oh, flashing sign, that's good.
Not a doodle poll, we got on that.
Okay, doodle poll. We
So-
love it.
I can't remember.
Okay,
what
so
it was.
I'll send out a doodle poll for the last 2 weeks of August, first 2 weeks of, or last 2 weeks of July, first 2 weeks of August.
Good.
Yeah, July, it's the 5th week, so typically we don't have any meetings that 5th week, so some of us take our time off then.
And it's my birthday.
It's what? So
My birthday.
Oh, we'll have a party.
July 31st. I like birthday parties.
I can do the second to last week of July and the first 2 weeks of August. Just rule out the last week of July, and you guys can all plan on.
How about the 3rd week of August? Is that a possibility, the following Friday?
Ooh.
I'm going to be gone.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
You know, it might be impossible to get 15 of us
why
there,
we
just
do
everybody knows
polls.
that.
That's right.
I think we're going to be choosing the date where we can get the most people,
Right.
not necessarily
Yeah,
where
just
we can get
doodle poll.
everybody.
That's the last week of the festival. 3rd week. So,
Okay, I will get that sent out here shortly. First Friday next week.
in terms of, can you go back to your previous slide?
Yeah.
Right, thanks.
History, charge, and current issues facing EOTC. I brought it up earlier tonight. It came up the other night in our town council. This whole notion of how we got into this lockbox situation, or whatever we call those things. We need to really open that conversation. That's one of the, I'm speaking on behalf of the council of Snowmass.
You're talking about the record of decision.
No, it's not. The savings
No, the
account.
Savings lockbox.
The
Oh, got it.
savings, the
Okay.
lockboxes, all that stuff, and that goes back to
When
your
we got
retreat.
out of altogether, so we might want to have that discussion too.
Okay,
That is currently on my list, just so you know.
good, Dave.
And so the next step will be, which ones do we start working on first? And I anticipate, like I mentioned before, that will be one of the first ones that I think we're going to need to tackle.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I'll say this as a member of the RAFTA board, RAFTA will be having a retreat June. And the reason why I bring that up is we want to make sure that I want to make sure we're partnering with RAFTA, and we're looking at some issues with RAFTA up in that Marine Creek corridor as well, and the summer bus service up to the Bells, and a variety of issues. So I want to make sure we dovetail, which I'm sure that you'll do anyway.
I have been working with them.
Yeah.
And that is also on the list.
Yeah, okay.
I would think the other thing that we've talked about in the past is
the distribution between operations and capital projects, as we're seeing more and more of our dollars going towards operations, limiting our ability for future capital. And when we just look at the line item for the no fare service, Aspen Snowmass, you can see how that is starting to drastically increase in costs over the next 5 years, getting close to $1 million. So that's a discussion.
All right. Well, that is, oh,
I know
sorry.
Tony had a comment on strategic planning, so I told her I would honor her request to speak briefly.
Okay, thank you so much. Would you please, Bill, turn back to that slide that Marky had you look at?
This one?
That one there. So I'm really thrilled that Dave is on board because I can see things are progressing a lot faster, and which is a good thing that EOTC is not burdened with a lot of this. Who's going to compile all this information? John Kruger, hopefully he's going to be receiving that $1 million bonus because of all the years that he's done that double duty. So Dave, you're very much appreciated. So now I'd like to jump into one thing and I wasn't going to talk about this, but that sign that you're going to put right before Smith Hill Road, that I don't understand why you picked that location before one of the most dangerous intersections. And almost weekly I call Brian Pettit and I go, oh my God, Brian, now the cars are backed up into the fast lane coming in, and that sign, when people are trying to figure out where they need to go through that intersection, they're not going to be looking at a sign. So I don't know if anything can be done about that, but I just really think that's a dangerous spot to put a sign telling people where to go, where it's really be better after it. Then the second thing is that I wanted to talk about the Aspen Snowmass Park and Ride. Because most of you know I do a lot of security work, a lot of concierge, and my job is to direct traffic. And when I have to tell people that they need to go Brush Creek Park and Ride, they're like, where's Brush Creek? But I say if you go to the Aspen Snowmass Park and Ride, they go, where's that? I go, it's located at Brush Creek. It's just an easier message to get out to people. So I just want to put that forward to you that people, Brush Creek, where's that? Brush, Colorado? I'm like, no, you want to park at Aspen Snowmass Park and Ride. And where is that located? Located at Brush Creek. The third thing is that this is really exciting that you're going to be taking a look at the EIS and the record of decision. And there's quite a few people in town have said if this new council that's coming into Aspen cannot deal with solutions, feasible solutions to the roundabout and to Cemetery Lane, and to really fix that entrance, that perhaps it should fall onto the shoulders of Picken County, because the city of Aspen is within Picken County. And Picken County, John Peacock, he's one of the best managers that I've ever seen and lobbied before and talked before. He knows how to pull people together. Is John here right now? Yeah, he's here. Sorry, John. And he's a Snowmass resident. He is a Snowmass resident. So that, and if John could work like with the city engineers like Tricia, she does a wonderful job, but it's really got to come from the top down, and we can't be afraid of it. So with Dave coming forward, that hopefully that, as you know, I've been a proponent of an aerial connection between Aspen and Snowmass. It's doable. It doesn't have to involve like the record of decision. We can do it exactly the same way that Beaver Creek did it. It's a land use application. But I would like during the retreat, if there could be some discussion about that, and then also basically a redesign of the Brush Creek Park and Ride, that as we know it, because when the buses pull in, the cars pull in, there's not one sign standing at the end of the winter season. It's usually gone in the middle of the season because in my opinion, having work security on the rafter buses and being on the buses and all the events there, that it would be better if the buses could be, as the Brush Creek neighborhood brought forward a suggestion, could move the bus into the middle of Brush Creek into the parking lot. And then that way people can come in. It's just what they do in major cities. You usually don't have your bus right there at the entrance. And that's all that I just wanted to bring forward. That in retreat, I'm thrilled about this EIS record of decision. And apparently, it sounds like anything that the public may want to bring forward, it's best to bring it forward to you, right? And then to John. to you, right? And then,
Yes, for EOTC.
okay, and then you can bring it forward
Yes.
to EOTC. So that way, and I'll still go to each individual jurisdiction, but I think it's a lot simpler and faster if we bring things to Dave, and then he puts it together.
That's what Dave's
Okay.
job is. That's
Say
his
again?
job. That's his job.
Okay, good.
His
Thank
job
you.
is to.
I just want to make sure I understand it
Yeah,
correctly.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okie dokie. Well, we're up to now updates, which are informational. And we see Dave Peckler coming forward, and he's going to talk about our,
Thank you,
hopefully,
EOTC.
brand-new transit center we're going to be building here in UMass.
I don't have a lot to add to the memo in your packet. I'll just give you a brief overview that we've hired Short, Elliott, and Hendrickson, SCH, a firm out of Denver. They were responsible for the redevelopment of the Civic Center station on the 16th Street Mall, if you know that facility in downtown Denver. Was one of the strong pieces that we chose them. They've also worked on a number of rafter projects, and they worked on our firehouse over here, so they have some understanding of the challenges we face in this environment here in the mountain community. We've had a couple of meetings with them and with stakeholders, which include town staff, RAFTA staff, and the adjacent property owner. And we've made some forward movements on what I will call a sketchy pre-sketch, which we reviewed the other day. I think we have a couple of options that we can move forward with. We will be bringing those to our town council on April 1st at their meeting. If you're interested, you can watch via Granicus. We will be presenting 3 pre-conceptual designs to see which way council is leaning. If they give us some direction, then we will refine those a little bit more, and we will be trying to do a public outreach from April 8th to the 12th or the 11th, with possibly an open house on Wednesday the 10th to get community input on the designs. That's about where we are. This is, we used the $50,000 that was earmarked in the 2018 budget to get to this point. And hopefully we'll have some designs to move forward. Any questions? Sure, Steve.
I heard the idea tossed out of putting a roof over Lot 6 and extending that transit area out, or using more parking or something there. Is that still a possibility, or is that
The project,
economically not feasible?
the projects, we're trying to deal with the project that as if it's really fiscally constrained. So we're trying to stay within roughly a $7 million budget. And a cantilevered concept is probably the most economical idea we can come up with. There will be some excavation underneath because we can't afford to lose the parking that we have associated with the mall at present. So the preliminary designs, if things go the way we hope, will pretty much be even on the parking numbers. But yes, it's going to be a deck that'll go out over Lot 6. There's a realignment of the road so that we get rid of some of the pedestrian bus conflicts that we have today in the current RAFTA depot. So the pad for RAFTA and our system moving up in there will help a lot with that. And one of the big things there is what we're getting from RAFTA over the last 2 years with some of the growth in employee movement on RAFTA is there's a lot of local trips that are happening on the regional bus that are taking up seating capacity in the PM peak hour and the AM peak hour that really puts a crimp into RAFTA's ability to move people up valley or down valley. So what we're trying to do is wean some of those local trips back onto local services so that the regional service has greater carrying capacity, because that's where the big bucks are in an operating budget. So that's one of the goals out of the whole project. Mm-hmm.
Any questions? Okay. As you can see, it's an exciting time here in Snowmass, a lot going on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Let's move on. HOV lane enforcement.
These ones I presented to each of you at the prep meeting, so I wasn't intending to go over them anymore. I just wanted to open up if there was any questions or comments that you all wanted to note about these within the larger group.
Any questions for Dave? Thought the reports were well done.
I do have a comment in general, can I?
Yes.
I really appreciate your taking the time to come to the jurisdictions and have like a preliminary discussion. I think we're much more effective here as a group. Obviously, look at what time it is. Yeah, and we're like the end of the packet. Yeah, Marky did an amazing job, but Dave had a lot to do with it. So I want to thank you. I think this is kind of a trial, and I think it's worth trying again.
Great, thank you for that.
Great job, Dave.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate what I've told the BOCC, but the rest of you haven't heard it. And George and I are the two who are traveling up and down from Basalt up. We go through the whole system, so we see all the things that aren't working and all the things that are dangerous and whatnot. And one of the things, a couple of things are dangerous from Brush Creek going down. One is people driving at a high rate of speed.
Oh, God, yes.
Everybody's going at least 65. I think some of them are
70.
going 75.
70.
If we're going to put law enforcement out there for any reason whatsoever, I would put them out there for slowing down the traffic and, giving tickets to speeders and not to trying to enforce the HOV lane. And the second issue has to do with the HOV lane. Here it says they're intended to increase transit efficiency and encourage carpooling. What it does is it puts bad driving habits in people. For 3 hours a day, it's confusing. It's only 3 hours a day each direction. And yet there are people 24 hours a day driving as if they're in an HOV lane. They're driving real slowly in the left lane. So we have a whole lot of people passing at a high rate of speed on the right lane all the time on Highway 82. It's extremely dangerous. And I think this HOV lane is the primary cause of why that people are getting bad driving habits on Highway 82. And so it's a bigger discussion, but I would like to get rid of the HOV lane from Brush Creek to Basalt. Just eliminate it. And I know that involves the record of decision, which is
Both records of decision.
This one would be Basalt to Buttermilk.
Yeah.
It's a different EIS, different.
Well, but if we're doing HOV all the way, it'd be...
Those are my concerns anyhow. I'd rather have a sheriff and the highway patrol catching speeders and people right on somebody's tail going 65 or 70 miles an hour. Let's stop that stuff. That's what's dangerous.
I've often wondered if there's something wrong with the speedometer in my car.
That HOV lane.
Because people are going so fast.
There's no HOV lane going through Snowmass Canyon.
Yes, there is. Yeah, there
It
is.
does say HOV?
Yeah, it's all the way to the Buttermilk main intersection. I mean,
Yeah.
the Basalt main
There
intersection.
is.
I drive it every day.
I swear there is.
Yeah, see? Don't you dare go 50 through there. That's the speed.
And don't you dare ride in that HOV lane if you're all alone. Yeah.
Just one other item that I realized later on that I brought up with some of you in the prep meeting and not others is with the FLAP grant and upcoming outreach. We are talking about sending out a survey, an online survey, just to gauge how people are currently using the lot and which facilities that are in the FLAP grant would have the most impact to changing behavior. So we're intending to use that to try to help guide our the next phases of design.
Can I ask, is that going to include the people who use the kiosk now to get their HOV parking permits for the city? Because that's a concern for me, to be moving it there and putting all that traffic coming and going from the park and ride. So I think it's interesting to know how people who actually use the kiosk where it is now will feel about having to go in and out of that parking lot to get their HOV parking permits.
Yes, and we're looking at monitoring that too. That would be a separate survey.
Okay.
This one's intended to be specific to the FLAP grant.
Okay.
We're still working on it internally. I'm not 100% sure yet that it's going to be coming out, but I wanted to give you a heads up in case you hear something. And you'd probably get a link to it when it does come out.
Patty,
Greg?
I just wanted to add on Patty's point. I think the point you made was very good. If somebody's coming from Burlingame or the ABC and needs that parking permit, they don't want to have to drive to the Intercept lot to get it, right?
North
The
40.
HOV. And that was the one thing, is how many people are actually use those permits coming out of a place that's south of,
Oh,
that's a question.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Excellent, thank you.
So we did ask people on January 31st and February 5th
at the airport kiosk where they originated from.
And we chose those dates because Wednesday is by far the busiest day at the carpool kiosk, just so you're aware. So from Aspen, there's one person. From the North 40, there's 2. From Burlingame, there was 3. From Old Snowmass, there was 4. From Owl Creek, there was 5. From Snowmass, there was 13. From Elgibel, there was 42. Beyond Glenwood Springs was 43.
wow.
Basalt was 50. Carbondale was 69, and Glenwood was 89. So if we're talking Burlingame, North 40, and Aspen, we're talking 5 out of 321.
Great,
So-
great info. Thank you. That was fast.
That's good information to know, but also snapshot in time, but also the issue of people having to pull in and out and how that will affect the signalized intersection at Brush Creek and Highway 82. We don't want to make that intersection worse. We want to try and improve it, so I just have a concern there.
Thanks.
Thank you very much,
That's
Mr.
interesting.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, right.
about that issue.
Well, that was good.
I'm impressed.
Did you used to be a Boy Scout? Come prepared. Thank you very much. Any other business to come before EOTC this evening?
I have nothing further now.
And next meeting will be in June?
June 20th, yeah.
Okay, everybody's got that on their calendar.
Quick, one last thing. It sounds as if there's a lot of question marks around the record of decision. I'm glad you've got it on your list. I want to make sure we have enough time
To dig into it. I'm in particular interested in finding out if we were to violate the record of decision. I don't even know what that means. What would that cost?
What would it cost us?
We have to pay back some grant money or fines or, yeah, who knows? But that's part of my concern is I have no idea what it means. I'm only told you can't open it, you can't touch it. And that's not satisfying.
And that's what I'm working on figuring out now. So with CDOT and FHWA, where those breaking points are, what kind of wiggle room we do have to make adjustments and don't have, if things are opened up, how much local control we have, those kinds of questions.
Just as a point of reference, the record of decision for the Smuggler Superfund site was amended, 8 times after we were told it was impossible to reopen it. So there are avenues in which you can. It just depends on the significance of the issue. And it's a different federal agency, but it's still a federal document. And if you violate it, it's kind of a federal offense.
Oh.
It's not just a slap and, we don't care. It's a big deal.
Don't know what that means.
You can go to jail.
That means you get Manafort's attorney and you
Okay,
get off
if there's no other
half the
business
time.
coming before us this evening, I want to
White-collar
thank everyone
prison.
for coming. I
Thank you. You did a
thank
great job.
everyone in the public. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
And Adam, we wish you well.
Thank you very
We're
much.
going to miss you.
We got out of here early.
I'll stay involved. I'm not sure I'll be at the
This is Aspen
retreat,
Country Inn.
but,
I was just seeing
there'll
it's
be other
about
ways for me to
1,000
You're more than welcome.
I know. There's the
retreats are in Las Vegas. Everywhere else it's a
the
long
Elk
meeting.
Valley bus stop. If somebody got off, they'd have
care.
to get off and
Thanks, guys.
Go through the underpass. I've done that. I've done that, sure. Walk up, so it'd be a little more.